Welcome to Thuli
and Gauta.
Uncut. Dear listeners and our favorite and followers of this Thuli and Gauta Uncut, today we're very excited to be joined by the one and only Professor Thuli Madonsela. She's now the head of social justice at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Thuli Madonsela, welcome.
Thank you, Thuli. Thank you for the privilege. And I must say that I am inspired by the work you do on Brand Africa, South Africa, and this platform as well. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you, Prof. Prof, let me shoot first a question for you. Let me ask the first question. You have come a long way since you left the office of the public protector in South Africa, and it's all out there that the current public protector is not occupied by someone like you yourself. There would never be many of you anyway. But do you feel that the current office of the public protector is playing the role that it should, given what's happening in South Africa?
Well, thank you, Thuli, and greetings to Gauta as well. The public protector is doing the best it can. You will recall that the team remains mostly the people I found, they're the people I trained, and I noticed that they're still also using the standard operating protocol that I designed when I was in office. Right. There has been some hits and misses, and of course a lot of it has to do with the politics of our country. I do hope, though, that we don't really throw the baby with the bathwater.
Thank you. The State Capture Commission, it's your baby. I don't think the government can take credit for it. Indeed, the government is in the dock there, and they're the ruling party. But it doesn't seem to be reflecting some of the reports that you published while you were public protector. For instance, we have not heard anything about corruption in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, the Northwest, and really many municipalities that you investigated, Bapo, Bamokhale, and those kind of things that where corruption was endemic. Are you satisfied with the way it is going? Because it seems in March there'll be an interim report from the Deputy Justice Zondo.
Well, I do share your concerns about the time it has taken to get where we are. I must indicate that the State Capture Commission that I ordered is different from the commission we have. The commission we have currently is a kitchen sink for all kinds of corruption. And therefore, you are right in being concerned about why are some other forms of corruption not coming in. I guess at the end of the day, it depends on who has gone to the commission. The way I see it is that in the State Capture Commission, part of it is the original agenda, which was I was asked to investigate whether or not President Zuma allowed the Guptas and companies owned by the Guptas and his son to capture strategic portions of the state and repurpose those portions of the state to do their bidding insofar as state contracts were concerned, state licenses for businesses, and to a certain extent capture elements of law enforcement to avoid accountability. And at the core of the allegations was the firing of Minister Nene, Minister of Finance, and his replacement with somebody who was seen to be a Gupta proxy, Minister Van Rooyen, and then later Minister Mosebenzi Zwane. And also the firing and replacement of some officials in state-owned enterprises that were seen to be critical to the business interests of companies owned by the president's son and the Gauta family. And therefore, my investigation was purely about those things. The core of it was the firing and replacement of the Minister of Finance. The second part of it was the capturing of other parts of the state. The third part of it was interference with law enforcement. The fourth part was interference with the banking industry, where it was alleged that President Zuma put pressure on cabinet to interfere with the banking industry. When President Zuma finally appointed the Commission of Inquiry, he expanded its terms of reference, which then created a very wide investigation with a whole lot of what we would call issue creeps if you were doing an investigation. So at some stage, I was dismayed about this, and I remember when President Zuma's people were trying to expand the terms of reference of the commission, I pushed back against it, but I was no longer a public protector at the time, and therefore there was nothing I could do about it. And the terms of reference were indeed expanded. Am I sad at this stage about the fact that we've gone wide? No. To a certain extent, this has opened a Pandora's box about a whole lot of skeletons that need to be cleaned out anyway. But we might still have to have a broader anti-corruption commission that would look at other forms of corruption, which I had recommended to government. So it would have worked better, though, if they had appointed two commissions. The commission to do what I asked to be done, which is conclude the investigation I left unfinished, and another commission to look at just generally the cesspool of corruption within the public affairs in our country.
Professor Madonsela, you know, there's a level of commission fatigue in South Africa. People fear that, you know, of course, the soap opera is very entertaining, all the stuff that's coming out, but we're also becoming blasés. There's so much negative, bad things that are coming out of there. We don't know what is more shocking than the other anymore. And we also know that at the end of a commission, a report will be compiled, I think, with recommendations that will be given to whoever will be president at the time. But the president has no obligation to do anything about it. He or she has no obligation to make it public. He has no obligation to act upon it. In hindsight, would you not have preferred to have made a stronger recommendation for the NPA to act rather than a commission?
Right. Sally, everything you've said is a valid concern. If the NPA was constituted as it is presently and poised to act on all allegations of corruption and wrongdoing, I would have considered recommending that they do this. About commission fatigue, it is true. There is a lot of fatigue. That's why ideally the commission should have concluded the one investigation and then let that proceed and move forward so that money can be found, so that the crime trails were still warm and so that the alleged wrongdoers would not be dancing around with impunity.
Oh.
So that's what could have happened, but it didn't happen, and there's nothing we can do about it now because the judge did what the terms of reference empowered him to do. If he had narrowed it, perhaps he felt that if he had narrowed it at the time, it would have been offensive to President Zuma because he was president at the time the commission was appointed, and he's the one who expanded the terms of reference. But having said that, this commission is not an ordinary commission of inquiry. Remedial action was crafted very carefully to indicate that this commission of inquiry has the same powers as the powers of the public protector, and therefore it is not optional for whoever is president to deal with this commission like any other commission. The president, whoever he or she may be would have to do what they would have done if this was the report of the public protector.
That's interesting. I hope they know that. I really hope they know that, because it's very doubtful that we're going to see any prosecutions coming out of it. As you say, a lot of the crime trials have become cold, and a lot of the people are walking around with impunity. Some of them are back in parliament as lawmakers. Others are walking on the streets, and they appear as stars in TV interviews. They seem to know something the rest of us don't. They seem to know that they're okay, nothing's going to happen to them. And this is really painful for South Africa.
I think for me, that's a lesson. We're providing training right now at Stellenbosch University on investigations and commissions of inquiry. The lesson that I learned at the very beginning of my career as a pub protector was make sure that you have an investigation plan, make sure that you control the timelines for investigation, and thirdly, collect those issue creeps, but don't let them distract you. And make sure that if you do get additional allegations, collect them, because you shouldn't discard them if they point to wrongdoing that must be addressed, but put them on the side with the possibility that you have a spin-off investigation. And of course, sadly, not every lawyer is an investigator. I went into this job as a researcher, which helped me because research is pretty much similar to investigating in that you have a focus. If you are researching, for example, how COVID-19 is spread, you can't, somewhere in the middle of that investigation, somebody says, oh, let's also look at how Ebola is spread or how HIV spread and all of those things. No, you stay focused on this. But in your report, you will also indicate that there are worrying indicators about Ebola and about HIV, etc. And either you give me a fresh mandate to pursue this or ask somebody else to pursue it.
Thank you, Prof. The state of our finances have been destroyed by corruption. What is the impact of this institutional damage on the social justice program, as you see it from your vantage point as chair of social justice at Stellenbosch University? To what extent is the work of social justice undermined by all this corruption?
The impact of corruption on social justice is devastating. Firstly, it is about money. To advance social justice, you have to address two things: accommodating difference and redressing disadvantage. Globally, social justice is about that, making sure that there's inclusion, because you will know that traditionally, systems were created on a one-size-fits-all, except that it wasn't one size fits all. It was the size fits the needs of those who make the laws. And in most societies, it would be men of upper class. But in countries such as ours and maybe the US, etc., beyond just the one size fits all, it was also just deliberate hierarchization of difference, where your Black people, your women, people from the LGBTQI community, foreigners, etc., would be excluded from certain benefits or suffer higher burdens in society than others, and also be excluded from certain opportunities and access to resources. So social justice is about just, fair, and equitable distribution of all opportunities, resources, benefits, and privileges in a society. But what people don't understand is when they think that equitable distribution means the same. It can't be the same if, for example, the three of us were in a monopoly game where two of us were allowed to play and accumulate everything, and then a couple of rounds later, the third one is is allowed to play, and when we have accumulated things. And of course, the principles of exponentiality would make sure that those of us who are in the game are always ahead. The one at the back, no matter how hard they run, not only will they be left behind, they might even slip far more behind. That's why we've become the most unequal society in the entire world. And poverty is increasing because poverty operates like an epidemic. It feeds on other forms of disadvantage. So corruption exacerbates this because to redress imbalances, to accommodate difference and include everyone in society so that no one is left behind, you need resources. But corruption also perverts your policies because instead of having the right policies that address the problem at hand, you pursue policies that are determined by those who have captured the policy process. BE is one example. I know BE has created 1 or 2 billionaires or millionaires, and we celebrate that. But BE should never have been structured the way it was structured because it really was a deal between big business and politicians. And for a country that was starting afresh, we needed to approach the situation more like Israel, where it's a startup nation. We look for the ones who have been left behind in all of our municipalities, and we invest in those and we create opportunities for those. To say big business, as long as they've given somebody 20%, they'll be treated the same way as we treat Royal Bafokeng, that was a recipe for failure. But we've tested it, and I'm not against BE. I don't like empowerment, because empowerment also, just as a concept, does not connote redress, does not connote restitution. It suggests that somebody has power, somebody is up there and they're lifting someone else. And I would prefer a term that is just about redressing imbalance and accommodating difference. But corruption, what I'm trying to say is that corruption is not new. At the dawn of democracy, there was corruption. Some of the policy routes that we've taken had some corrupt influences in those policy choices. But the Zuma period became a period where there was blatant disregard of process and bastardization of institutions, which then has made it difficult to have functional state institutions that know the difference between right and wrong and have the capacity to pursue right.
Social justice. Is there any hope for social justice in Africa, in South Africa, when leaders do not seem to understand what it means? Because I mean, it could be a push from the bottom, as we're all trying, and I know you are working very hard to try and conscientize people about the importance of social justice. But if the people who hold the resources and who control policy making do not seem to either understand it or to regard it as important, is there any hope for it in Africa, in South Africa?
There is hope for social justice in South Africa and Africa because you, me, and many others know about social justice. And just between me and Gauta and others, we can make a difference by just educating the very same leaders about what is social justice. And our approach has been that engaging with the late Minister Jackson Tembo about the crucial role that the Planning Ministry and the Planning Commission could do to advance social justice. I don't necessarily want to look at China as a model for democracy, but I do think that we do need to look at China as a model for purpose-driven advancement of communities. Ghana is another example. For example, more recently, as part of ending poverty and inequality, they looked at water as one of the challenges. And then they decided at a policy level, a dam in every community. One of the challenges that I see in South Africa is, for example, when the president says we're going to build a smart city, and then I'm waiting to hear, oh God, it's going to come in one of the rural areas. We're going to have a city similar to Kunshan in China, where a rural village is transformed into a city. Then I hear, no, that's going to happen at Eguruleni. I worry about that we really need to firstly design what does South Africa look like when we have arrived. And then when we invest, when we pursue policies, we're always looking at in what way is this taking us forward insofar as social justice is concerned and inclusive growth is concerned. The one thing that will make people move forward on social justice is that there's a growing group of global business people like Paul Polman, who have come to understand that climate change is one of the pressing challenges of our time, and social justice is equally a pressing challenge of our time. But if you want sustainable growth of your economy, of your social life, of well-being, better invest in everyone. And if you invest in everyone, you've got to invest in a manner where you skew your investment towards those who have been left behind in order to level the playing field. And Biden is one example again where he's doing that, or at least he's announced to do that. So I think those leaders that are aware of social justice and are prepared to speak out will influence South Africa.
The institutions of governance are very central to the transformation of society. As you remember, in the Reconstruction Development Program, one of the objectives thereof was the transformation of state institutions. But in my opinion, there is very slow development in that regard in the Ramaphosa administration. The president doesn't seem to take state transformation as a core priority of his administration. It is there in the NDP. We have not yet started implementing the NDP since adopting it in 2012. And state transformation, which is central to the development, the political democratization, and public participation, seems to be too slow for my liking. It's not even a priority.
I share your concern that we're slow. I'm a little bit optimistic, though, about the president. I do think that he has mentioned the importance of transforming state institutions. And I do think that he and the Minister of Public Enterprises have started to revisit the future of public enterprises. I think he has intervened to make sure that the SIU is as agile as it was designed to be, not by interfering in that process, but by making sure that the people who are appointed are given the freedom to act as they deem fit without interference. And you can see the way the SIU is operating, that it is not being interfered with. If it did, it wouldn't have taken the route it has taken. NPA, the same thing. Minister Jackson Mthembu of the Planning Department, Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, was also on the verge of resetting the outlook of that department to become a planning department, because for whatever reason, instead of it being a planning department, it became monitoring and evaluation and created all sorts of systems for monitoring and evaluation. Even our approach to the Sustainable Development Goals focused on monitoring and evaluating. How do you monitor and evaluate something you haven't done? Because the SDGs are supposed to be a catalyst. And if you did chemistry at school, you would know that you have two ingredients that you have been working on, and you want to add a catalyst to fast track the process. You can't keep things as they are and then measure what has been the impact of the catalyst. And I got the sense that the minister was moving in that direction. I do hope that what you are concerned about, which is a valid concern, is something that hopefully the president and his lieutenants are looking at. But having said that, when we started, Soli said something about the importance of us taking our destiny in our own hands. Why don't we as civil society come together and look at what needs to be done and get them to do? Because often people are appointed based on their education, not based on their ability. And I notice, for example, now that the Public Service Commission approach now is you must have a master's degree in this to do something. I just saw this when there was this issue of somebody to be appointed to lead a state security agency. And I've got nothing about whether he's qualified or not, but I was worried about the fact that they said he doesn't qualify because they said they need a master's for that job. When did this become a requirement? When we did the white paper on transforming the public service, we specifically said that either academic qualifications or experience. I mean, some of the best companies, unicorns in the tech industry were started by people without even a degree. I'm not saying appoint unqualified people. I'm just saying we have to test for suitability. And people got confused about the investigation I did with the SABC. Kawodi's issue was not about whether he was qualified or not. Kawodi's issue was, in other words, was he qualified on paper? Kawodi's issue, at least insofar as my investigation was concerned, was that he was a conman and that he had lied about his qualifications and therefore he should not be in that position. So going forward, as we are looking at reinventing these institutions, yes, we should look for people who are suitably qualified. And but me, you, and everyone else who can assist, we should light a candle.
We have envisaged with the municipal systems that planning would involve communities in ward committees and civil society at that level. But in my experience in villages and townships, the ward committees are dysfunctional and the speaker's office don't take them seriously. Community policing forums don't exist in many areas. And there's hardly any planning at the premier's level and the mayor's level. For instance, for the economic recovery and general planning. I mean, the planning has been dysfunctional for many years. But now we have this COVID-induced economic meltdown. But the municipalities, the communities are not seized with the responsibility to plan anew to reset the way we do things in South Africa. So indeed, it's a very, very, very serious problem that needs civil society to participate in.
I do agree with you entirely that we need to activate civil society, and even these structures where we feel that they're broken, maybe pick one or two where we can assist. I do know that here in the Western Cape, where I am, planning has not stopped. I remember I was invited to a strategic planning event last year towards the end of the year, and people presented, and they were not just planning in a very unstructured way. It was strategic planning, thinking about scenarios, thinking about different ways the future could unfold, and indicating what had they learned from COVID-19 experiences, despite their best intentions, where had they dropped the ball and how are they going to move forward? I suspect that there might be some other municipalities that are doing a great job. Maybe let's find those good practices and then find the ones that are struggling and just let them know, because if they go down, they'll go with us. If this boat, South Africa, goes down, we're all going down. For me, the greatest threat from corruption and incompetence is that we're going to have a mindless revolution. Because, people look at the French Revolution and look at what came out of it, the Bolshevik Revolution. Those revolutions were led by revolutionaries whose manifestos we knew, A lot of the people who masquerade as revolutionaries today have no direction. They have no manifesto. Today they stand for this, tomorrow they stand for that. So if our people are misled by them and then they go on rampage because they're hungry, we are all in trouble.
Prof, I want to go back to the question about qualifications and appointing the right people for positions. We know that a lot of the people who are implicated, especially in state capture, are highly qualified individuals. They're engineers, they're accountants, chief financial officers who are chartered accountants, and those kind of qualifications. I'm not sure that we're paying sufficient attention to the question of ethics, because it takes really highly educated people to pull off what we went through over the past 12 years or 10 years or so. What must happen to make sure that a person doesn't just put a certificate on the table, but that they understand that they're being put into a position of serious responsibility towards a country that's trying to heal from a really painful past and that wants to go somewhere, and that they have the responsibility of all those people that we're talking about in communities around the country? How do we insist, how do we judge that the person is going to be ethically correct for the position, and how do we take them out as soon as they go rogue on us?
Thank you. Firstly, you're right that we're not sufficiently showing commitment to ethics, both in terms of our pronouncements and in terms of those that step out of line. Occasionally we do the right thing, but we're not doing things adequately. And I like your approach in saying, let civil society enter the arena. There are people who complain that President Ramaphosa is not strong enough on ethics. Because, for example, when people step out of line, you've got to specifically say in terms of Section 96, this shouldn't happen. In terms of Section 136, if it's in the province, it shouldn't happen. In terms of Section 195, it shouldn't happen. But if your own political situation is precarious because your party is basically a coalition of some sort, then civil society should step in and show the way.
So, Prof, let's talk about GBV a little bit. I know that the president recently announced some funds that would be used to protect women, to create opportunities for women in business, to ensure that, I'm struggling to see how that would impact on levels of GBV. Do you think that we're doing enough? It seems to me that it's becoming like an annual festival. There's a period in the year when we talk about gender-based violence, and we all appear on TV, we look smart, we write newspaper articles, and then we move on to something else until the next year. But these things continue to happen. Are we not sufficiently attacking the roots of it? Do we understand what really causes this?
You're absolutely right about focusing on the roots. And for me, I'm optimistic that the advent of this fund will take us back to an integrated response to gender-based violence, which integrated response was Mandela's approach. You can't just look at law enforcement. You can't look at just giving women shelters. You've got to find out, why are they being killed? Why are they being raped? Why are they being beaten up? And I do hope that one of the things that we are going to address here is mental health. We're a society where people were wired to lead or wired to feel entitled, whether because they're white, or whether because they're men, or whether because they're upper class. And then we have a constitution that introduces an egalitarian society.
Right.
Of course, for some people, that feels like something is being taken away and there is a backlash. And I hope that some of the research will look at that, and not all of the money should go into women's programs. Some of the money should go into men to help them cope with the transition, to help them find a new identity in the new normal.
The late Minister Zola Skweyiya, as a welfare minister, proposed an intervention into families to find out how the Department of Social Development could assist in building families, looking into the problems of the family unit. But that fell by the wayside. I wonder how relevant it would be under these circumstances, because there are many families that are dysfunctional for various reasons, economic, social, and hierarchical reasons, and drug abuse is rife in families, alcohol abuse, and all sorts of pathologies.
You've hit the nail on its head. There's a lot of research and growing data that shows that if you want a turnaround in your society's outlook, morality, and general well-being, intervene in families. I know the UK is doing this. I know that in Southern America, they've done that. The entire social justice movement in the UK is focusing entirely on rebuilding a family resilience. Mrs. Zanele Mbeki and the South African Women in Dialogue are advocating for just that approach of rebuilding families. And in our country, we must also know that part of the capitalist strategy under apartheid was to destroy families in order to be able to have this labor reservoir that was endless. In the end, that has come back to haunt us. And therefore, part of rebuilding the fabric of our society is to build resilient individuals, resilient families, and resilient communities. The Tuma Foundation is a project that's looking at also rebuilding communities into communities, because most communities are not communities. They don't see themselves as an ecosystem supporting each other. Everyone is looking out there. There isn't that sense of interdependence, Ubuntu, and growing forward together.
People talk about the kind of leadership that is needed in South Africa, the kind of president we should have. Your name always comes up, either in the list, somewhere towards the list, the top of the list, usually at the top of the list. What is your answer to those South Africans who think Thuli must be our president?
I really have no aspirations to become president. If there was some kind of advisory council that would really be properly respected, I would be happy to be part of something like that. But here is my investment in terms of creating the kind of timber that we need for presidency. At Tuma, we have a program that is called Epic Leadership. We're developing young leaders that are ethical, purpose-driven, impact-conscious, and committed to serve. And one of our proteges has just been appointed into a World Council on Democracy, and he's been doing amazing things, including having started a marking up for teachers, which is light a candle if you see a problem rather than complain. At Stellenbosch University, we have the M Plan for Social Justice that is about harvesting whatever academic, intellectual resources that we have to help government to plan better, particularly using data science, predictive data science, to test policies before they are implemented on how they are likely to impact on different groups in society: women, rural people, Black people, foreigners, and people with disabilities, LGBTQI community. But if you walk the journey in the virtual space, then you correct your policies, you're likely to implement better policies. If you must proceed with that policy, then you might have to then have a compensation strategy. That's our contribution. Our contribution is also about leveraging resources in society and saying to people in society, let's pool monies together. There are 4,392 wards in society. There's a whole lot of development that is going on, but some of these communities are totally left behind. Why don't we pool our own resources and see if we can help with infrastructure in those communities? We can help rebuild schools. We can help make sure that there's digital access for every child in this country. and there's health in every country. And so that's where I think I can make a contribution: leadership development, democracy strengthening, and advancing social justice.
Folks, that's our discussion for today. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you continue to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Thuli and Gauta. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Thuli and Gauta Uncut. Please subscribe to our channel by clicking on the subscribe button. And for notifications of new episodes, please click the bell. And see you next time.